This is Resonance 104.4 FM. Flipping marvellous. London's Art Station. I'm Nick Hennegan, and welcome to another slice of Literary London, which is a programme all about, well, you know, London and literature. But you should know by now, shouldn't you? Yes, you should. We are also, again, continuing this sort of trend that started in lockdown. We're recording it in visual. So if you're listening in stereo, you can see us waving. Hello. Yes. It's also, we're going to be on the londonliterarypubcrawl.com podcast page after this. The new website called Bohemian Britain, which makes me laugh slightly, because how do you be a good Bohemian? Of course, we're also on the Maverick Theatre YouTube channel. So everywhere, my loves, everywhere. And actually, I'm really looking forward to this show, because we talk a lot to writers and artists, and we talk a lot about London and this Bohemian Britain thing that's just, you know, we were voted the second most popular Bohemian podcast in the world to follow. Number one was in New York, by the way, which makes me smile, because how do you be a good Bohemian? Well, I've got two people with me who absolutely know what a Bohemian is. And if you can hear a bit of noise in the background, that's because one of my guests today is Lesley Lewis, who is the landlady of a pub called the French House, which is in Dean Street in Soho. And I think she's still there.
I am.
You are, aren't you? You're in the pub. You're in the pub, Lesley. How brilliant.
Where else would I be?
Absolutely. I mean, and now that at the time of talking, May 2021, is it? Yeah, that's right. The pubs have reopened for outdoor space, and we must talk about that as well in a moment. But Hilary Heath as well, who's I think officially part-time manager, but I would say one of the stalwarts of the French.
Oh, thank you.
This is a pub.
Absolutely.
I got the wart bit right.
Well, and the actual pub, actually it's the first pub I ever went to in London and got lost, because everyone's called it the French House for years, but it was officially not called the French House. I remember walking up and down Dean Street, and it was only when someone told me that the pub, I forget the name of the pub now, it was the
it was the York Minster.
York Minster, that's right, absolutely, yeah. York Minster. And that was in the late 70s, and I've been going in there ever since. The London Literary Pub Crawl, which I know a lot of you will know from around the world, doesn't go into the pub, because the very first time we went in with 20 people on a Saturday afternoon, it was ridiculous. It's not the biggest pub in the world, but it's certainly the coziest, and described as, I think, by many as Soho's local village boozer. And of course, lockdown and the lockdown and business has suffered, and the French are trying to sort of battle back in a typically French house type of way by having an auction of artworks, and that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. But before that, Lesley, just talk about the French House. I mean, you've been there. It was Gaston Berlamont, wasn't it, who used to have it? Had it for years.
Yes, yes. I took over from Gaston in 1989.
And tell us about the French. What is it about? What? Just tell us about the French House.
Well, I suppose it's my whole life, and lots of other people's as well. I don't know. It's such a magical place. It's in the walls. Everybody's still here, and it's very adored by a lot of people, and we must do everything in our power to save it. So Hilary and I are on this campaign to actually do that, because times are very, very, very difficult. We've had a busy lunch, but it doesn't make up for the 10 deep at the bar on a Friday or Saturday night. But we're getting there.
I suppose people might, because it's a fundraiser, and basically, I mean, the list of people that go to the French is kind of a who's who of people in the arts, really. I mean, Hilary, you've worked there for a while, haven't you? You must have seen a few, and will not break your confidence. But certainly, I mean, I know, you know, Francis Bacon used to go in there quite often, and I mean, Tracy Emin's been involved in this. There's artwork for sale on the walls, which is lovely. You're a sort of an independent pub, aren't you? You're not part of a massive chain.
No, we're a very independent pub. We have had offers, but wouldn't take it. This is a one-off place, and we want to keep it that way. But what was extraordinary was, you know, when we were sort of hitting hard times, this all started with one of our sculptors suggesting he give a couple of pieces of works of art that we could auction as a little donation. From that, it has grown, thanks to Mrs. Heath there, it has grown into, I think we've got 220 items now. So it's sort of massive. I think every artist who's ever walked through the door, and that's quite a few, has donated a piece to it. And I mean, it's overwhelmingly moving, and I just don't know what to say really, because it's just
Can
been
I just
amazing.
say what I think is amazing about it is that it's come from all over the world as well.
Yeah.
We've had people send stuff from Australia, Mexico, New York, France. It's like Soho's just not, this tiny little spot. It's global. It's fantastic.
It certainly does. There's also always a lot of interest again with the London Literary Pub Crawl. People come from all over the world on that. And I suppose it's something to. I know the Soho Society have been very good in the past. They were perhaps one of the first neighbourhood associations that, I mean, years ago, started standing up to property developers. But Soho, I mean, you must get asked this so much really, but I love it as well, because I mean, I kind of work there and with a little desk space up there, and the French was a place, when I got over the shock, I've only been served half pints, of course. I know it's had to change recently because of the COVID restrictions. It's one of the places where you can it's city centre, bustling, but it's one of the places where you can sort of sit up the corner, and if you want to make a few notes, and you can have a couple of beers, and it's there's a sort of and get recognised, of course, which is something that doesn't happen much in pubs all over the place, for all the right reasons, by the lovely stuff, including yourself, Hilary. I mean, so
know me by my drink.
Yeah. It's also, I think, one of the few places where you could buy a glass of champagne. Not that I'm a great champagne drinker, as you probably assume by now, but you could also buy champagne by the glass. And it's occasionally as well, I'm sure you won't mind me saying, at the weekend you used to get sort of professional French house drinkers who'd pop up from the provinces with carnations and big handkerchiefs in their pockets and hats and things like that, which are always quite lovely and tolerated. And it is one of the pubs you can go into virtually every night of the week and know someone. You'll nod and
or find a kindred spirit, shall we say?
And presumably, Hilary,
many
that's one of the
kindred
reasons
spirits have gone off together and still living happily ever after.
Yeah, that's another side. I mean, presumably, Hilary, it's recognising that this isn't a normal pub. It's not. So presumably, again, Lesley, the idea of just furloughing the staff and carrying on, that's not an option because of the size of the business.
Well, we did furlough everybody as long as we could, but as soon as we opened, it's only 10 tables outside, but it takes a vast amount of work. So nobody's furloughed at the moment.
But this was the point. It was it was. I mean, I don't want to pry into your personal affairs, as it were, but was the French house in real trouble during lockdown because you're not part of
it was facing it, and I see it because we work on cash, cash as do most businesses, and we just paid the rent for a 3-month period, and we had all the bills coming in, and there was no money coming in at all. We sold marmalade. We tried doing takeaway food. We tried doing T-shirts. We tried everything really.
There's also the fundraiser, the crowdfunding.
We started the GoFundMe.
And so all of the regulars and people who love us from all around the world put in over £80,000, but it didn't hit the target, did it? I mean, the fundraiser hit the target, but the rent's more than that.
Yeah, I think the thing is what has happened. I mean, it's lovely having 10 tables outside, and customers, bless them, are spending as much money as they possibly can. But it's still, it's just not enough. It's ever so expensive to have a place in Soho, and particularly a tiny little place like this. And the generosity of our artists and Hilary particularly, and so many lovely, lovely people. I'm so proud of us all. And I hope it does really, really well.
And presumably so tell us about the auction, Hilary. So that's how I knew about it, because we sort of got in touch. There's an amazing amount of, I have to say as well, because we're going out, it may well be the auction would have finished by the time you're listening to this, but check out the website anyway, and you've got an amazing amount of
it has. It's like Lesley said. Anthony Hawkins said, we can get a few people and we'll have a little, over the bar auction like we do on Pints Day, auctioning pints off. And then it sort of steeped out a bit, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And it's exploded. It's an explosion of art. And we've got over 220 people who've contributed from all around the world. It's just incredible. There's so much love and so much fantastic art as well. I mean, it's easier. It's probably quicker to say who's not in it than who's in it. If it's a who's who.
It really is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I quite like, because you've got obviously, I mean, people like Tracy Emin works for, I mean, some of the greatest artists in the world. I quite like the one that really took my eye, and I've done a little drawing, but of course, one of the nice things about it is that in a sense you've had to close the doors to entrance, haven't you? You've had so many people trying to donate that the system won't cope with anymore at the moment.
The system is the cricket captain, Johnny Spitfire, and a lovely girl called Abby, and Marcus Rowell, the auctioneer, and Anthony Hawken as well. And we've all just been working like until our eyes are bleeding, getting the catalogue together, and the auction company being great as well, Easy Love Auctions. But it is all coming together, and it's going to be great on Saturday.
I quite like I quite like the one that struck my eye was a pint of Guinness, and it was
Suggs, yeah.
So, and of course Suggs as well, and of course his mom, God bless her, they were regulars, certainly were regulars in the French house. I remember I remember bumping into Amy Winehouse there a few years ago. It's that kind of place, and I think people recognize that spirit, and there tends to be no pretense about it, is there? You know, sometimes and you're not very keen on mobile phones, which I sort of quite hated and then liked for a while. So it's the character of the pub, and obviously it comes from you, Lesley. I mean, what you were obviously aware of the place before you bought it, obviously, weren't you?
Oh yes, very much so. I mean, it was terrifying the first couple of days. I took over the place, and then I found out the place was condemned, which was a bit of a blow. And I had 3 months to sort it out. But it was the most loved place probably in the universe, and I had to rebuild it basically. So we did it through the night and pretended nothing had happened, and kept our fingers crossed and hoped for the best. But then the windows opened, and we had some nice bar stools, and suddenly we were forgiven a little bit. But they still talk about Gaston wouldn't have done it that way, even now, 32 years later. But you know,
it's quite lovely. In a sense,
the magic.
It's quite nice to say about it. In a sense, it's a sort of a backhanded compliment anyway that people are talking about. There aren't many pubs, I don't think, anywhere in the world that have that sort of heritage. I know we've actually got on the LondonLiteraryPubCrawl.com website there's a video page, and we've got I found a film of Gaston's leaving do.
Yeah,
so many people turned up, they had to close the road off, didn't they?
They did.
Pictures of, again, you know, 1 or 2 drunken artists. It's a lovely thing. So if people want to know more about as I say, you may be watching or listening this after the auction's finished, but for people that are not, how do we find out more about the auction and the sort of the fundraising campaign generally to save the French?
You can go to the French House website or the French House Instagram account, French House Soho. And both of those have details of how to register to bid and access to the catalogue. You have to register to bid a day in advance just to make sure that your details go through properly. But yeah, the French House website or the French House Instagram account both have all of the details and the how-tos.
And what's the French House website address? Do you know off the top of your head?
www.frenchhousesoho.com.
FrenchHouseSoho.com. Yeah.
.com.
Thanks.
Yeah. I know. I should have asked you that earlier. Yeah, so we'll put that link on the YouTube
Thanks,
details as well. And so Lesley, it sounds like well, for both of you really, lockdown has been a very worrying time. How did you sort of cope with it? Did you find it?
Well, I stayed here, of course, because I live here, and it was really horrible coming down, because this building is made for people. It deserves people, and people deserve it. And it was quite horrible being here on my own, just with the ghosts. So I'd open the window and start selling marmalade through the window, so there was somebody to chat to. I know it sounds pathetic, but when you're used to being surrounded by people, it's quite horrendous to suddenly be completely on your own. But slowly we managed to get we got the fundraising in, and we were doing T-shirts and things, and we had a little production line going. Hilary leading the helm as usual on that one, and Dottie Phillips, who's 92, helped, and everybody just wanted to be part of it. And so now I have strangely enough, I have quite fond memories of that time. But
yes,
anyway.
and it is something, as you say, I've noticed it a little bit. I mean, I tend to work for myself anyway, you know, and one or two people of my friends who are writers will talk about suddenly getting on the tube for the first time, and it's freaking them out slightly. Because without realizing it, you're mentally gearing down, or without realizing it, you're almost coping with no other people around. And what about yourself, Hilary? Because you were there at the French a lot. I know you've got you're involved with art anyway, aren't you?
Well, I'm married to a world famous cartoonist, but he's been working from home, so I've been assisting him. So I had office duties before. I wasn't completely idle. Yeah, but like Lesley said, I've sort of looked back to lockdown a bit fondly as well, especially when it's a lovely sunny burst. But
I suppose that, I mean, as a boozer, it saved me a fortune, but I mean that's the point of the action.
Oh well, we can help you with that problem.
We are the first physical tour is coming back into Soho on the 27th of March for the London Literary Pub Crawl, which was a one-off event I wrote for the Olympics, and it's been going ever since, which is very nice. And there's no actors available, so I've got to do the one on the 20th, and I'm looking forward to it. Oh yes, we shall be back in Soho again. And so what about the future for the pub, Lesley? I mean, it's your place. It's not owned by big breweries and stuff. It's effectively like a cottage industry. So how does the future look?
Well, I don't own it, but my landlords have been incredibly supportive, actually, which really helped as well. And they gave me an extra 5 years on my lease, which was really rather nice. So I don't think they want to get rid of us. Well, I hope they don't. But no, because it's like I'm the third landlady, whatever, in 105 years.
Wow.
And on the 31st, on the 30th of December every year, we don't do New Year's Eve because it's horrible. But on the 30th, it's the anniversary of the signing of the lease, and we always celebrate that. So that's our party.
I do quite like as well. There are other little traditions. So there's always the school photograph that I've been involved in.
Oh yes, the 14th of July, and we'll be able to have Bastille Day this year.
Yes.
Unless some other thing happens.
Yes, let's hope not. And of course, and traditionally, it's always been a tradition that the French only serves halves. I suppose that kind of goes back to the old days of tell us why it was called the French House originally, because it was a slang.
Well, originally, we're going back now to 1914, and it was owned by a gentleman called Christian Schmidt, and Christian Schmidt was German. No, he wasn't. Yes, he was. He was German, and it was a good time for him to get out of this country. And he sold it to his next door neighbours, who were the Berlimonts. Sold the lease, and the Berlimont family took over in 1914, and Gaston was born here. Schmidt, we thought, had gone back to Germany, but no, he ended up in Canada. So I get strange letters from all over the world about Schmidts and Berlimonts. But of course, Victor, who lived next door, who was the first French landlord, called the place Maison Française. And he was trained by Escoffier at the Savoy, and he was a top chef. And there was a lovely restaurant upstairs, which is a tradition I wanted to carry on. And we now have the lovely Neil Borthwick. And last time we got number 23 out of 100 best restaurants in the UK. Brilliant. For our 5 little tables at the moment. We'll go up to 7 once this is all over. At the moment, when we open on the 17th, it will be 5. But we'll have our little outside as well, our Costa del Soho. On a good day.
The Dean Street Riviera.
Bit windy today. But you can close your eyes and dream, can't you?
Oh, brilliant. Well, I mean, you still, and of course the pints day. So you had to start serving pints, didn't you, for practical reasons because of the
Yeah, we can only really have one person behind the bar, and it just made life a lot easier. We've had to all the bar staff have now become waiters. All the tables have moved outside. I mean, it's been quite a learning curve for all of us, and particularly after 4 months of lockdown. But everybody's been incredibly supportive, and we're getting there.
Well, it's brilliant. So if anyone wants to know, I mean, you're opening, I mean, the UK, we sort of theoretically the next step is, I think, the 21st of May 2021, isn't it, where the
17th, I think.
is it 17th?
17th, yeah.
So
Yeah.
people can go indoors then as well, so life will slightly return more to normal. And I'm looking forward to going up, the old farts corner at the top, which I've graduated to now. So by the
Deep
exit
end.
door, up that bit.
Every corner is an old farts corner, don't worry.
But it's lovely to talk to you. And so just give us the details again about the auction, Hilary. And if anyone wants to get in touch, so you said the fundraising campaign has finished now, the GoFundMe thing. But if anyone wants to get in touch,
No, it's actually still open. You can still donate to that on GoFundMe. So I can't remember the link for that, but it's all on the French House website.
And that hopefully it's going to be all right. And it's the French House. Yeah, so the email, the website is the French House Soho.com.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you so much for coming on. And Lesley, I sounds like you're having a great time there outside at the French House.
Well, it's the nearest thing to a holiday they're going to get. So that now everyone's having a well of a time and on their 6th bottle or something like that. But I think they're drinking to support us as well, which is lovely.
I know, and actually, so I know that my local boozer,
we better make a donation
to
their livers.
Sure, yeah. So brilliant. That's right. FrenchHouseSoho.com is the email address. Thank you both so much for coming on. And I mean, it's been what a year or so. And here's looking forward to the next 5 years now that you've got the lease of the pub. And I'll be down to help support.
Oh, I've got more than 5 years. That was added on. That was 5 years added on.
Oh, fantastic.
So, yeah, you're stuck with me for about 15, I think now.
Oh, that'll do. I'll also remember very vague when we first did the literary pub crawl and brought these people around and it was so busy. The following week, you may not remember, Hilary, there were 5 or 6 of us over the road and you saw us and brought us out.
I brought you out half pints. Yeah, I remember that.
So glad, yeah, exactly. And it's folklore now. The other actors talk about it. I think they're probably hoping, but and it's still talked about by a journalist. We got mentioned in the New York Post, would you believe? So, yes, word spreads. So, thank you so much again for taking part.
Oh, thank you.
One of the institutions of Soho, that's the French House Pub on Dean Street, Soho, London. And that's it for this episode. Thanks for your time. Next time, who knows what will happen? But stick around. If you want to get in touch, as always, radio@mavericktheatre.co.uk is probably the best way to do that. Hello to Kathy, California, who sent me an email. I shall deal with that. I'll look out rainy night in Soho by the Pones for you, Kathy. Kathy, California. She listens on the beach, apparently, so she said.
Oh, lucky thing.
I know. And I'll see you next time. I'm Nick Hennegan. This is Literary London on Resonance 104.4 FM.